The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the podcast belong solely to the hosts and not the host's past, present, or future employers. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Brian, Miss Berlin, and Mr. Betcher for Breaking Down Security.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey. We're back this week. Another great show. Appreciating all the talent that's out there that are reaching out and giving us their time and effort to do so. I'm glad to see Miss Berlin's back. As I want to do as a PM, I like to ask people if they're going to be available to record that evening. And Miss Berlin was like, "Yes, we're at the beach and it's all fun and everything." And I was like, "Please send me a picture." And why did you send that picture? That was not a good picture. That's not a beach picture.
I mean, it's beach in Ohio in February. I don't know what you're expecting.
Well, what do you do at the beach on?
So I moved near the beach, so I'm going to take advantage of it whenever I can. And we had it to ourselves.
I can understand why.
Yeah, there was a little bit of sand and a lot of snow.
Yeah.
It was nice and warm. It was like almost 60 degrees and sunny, and we were just in sweatshirt and jeans and hiking boots, and
right.
Yeah, it was fun.
Was the lake still frozen, or was
yes.
Is it water? Okay.
Not frozen enough that you can be on it anymore.
Okay.
It's to the point where regularly you see Air National Guard going and saving the idiots that are still out there in their four-wheelers.
Right.
Yeah. So
here, holding my beer. Yeah.
They're like, we can get one more day of ice fishing in.
You mean going out into the middle of a pond or whatever and drinking yourself blind or whatever? Mm-hmm. My friend who lived in Minnesota when I worked at CrowdStrike, he said, "Oh yeah, that's the only reason you go to ice fish. You just drink yourself, blind, and you go up with Applejack. There's that's what you do." So
I did not know that.
Well, you can try it next year. So there you go. All you need to do is take a bit. You don't want to do that? No?
I don't. One of my major fears and how I think I'm probably going to die for some reason is plunging into an icy, watery grave. Okay. So I kind of stay off the ice.
Watched far too many movies.
Right? I don't know why.
Too many movies with that. Yeah. Mr. Betcher, how are you doing this week? You're very, have you thought out, you were down in the Austin, Texas area where, it was snowpocalypse. And we say that up here in Seattle, but y'all truly were snowpocalypse.
Yeah.
Snowpocageddon.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. But it's 75 today, so go figure.
I hate you so much right now.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. The stories I heard 4 minutes away from a complete meltdown of the entire electrical grid there. Yeah.
I heard that too.
I would love to have somebody come on and talk about, how fragile our electrical grid is, but I'm afraid that would just make me more angry. So
I was going to say, I have a couple of people we can talk to.
You know what? Let's go ahead and have them come on and talk, not just from a disaster point of view, but from how easy it is to do. If it's hacks, missed pancakes, or somebody like that, I would love to have them come on if they can spare some time. I'd love to have them come on.
All right.
Cool. Okay. So we have a guest this week. I reached out on Twitter because a lot of folks, they have a lot of interesting things in there. Had an interesting post about Android application, reverse engineering, and analysis, and wanted to have her on. And I'd like to welcome Jasmine to the show. Jasmine, thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. Yeah. So, your message on Twitter, it was like, oh, okay. And the invite to the podcast, I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting because I know one of my Twitter followers, Omi, and I might be pronouncing his handle wrong. He was, because I did a workshop at Blacks in Cybersecurity earlier this month. And he was in attendance, and he was like, "Oh wow, I really enjoyed your talk." And I was like, "Okay, that's really good." So, that's always the goal, is for people to enjoy my workshops and to learn new things.
Okay, very cool. Yeah. Are you planning on giving those workshops again in the future? We can definitely mention those to everybody.
So usually I do it on an ad hoc basis. I also I had a YouTube channel for about a year now, but it was just dormant. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to actually start posting videos on my YouTube channel. So I did it today of actually part of the workshop that I did earlier this month. So I'm going to try to build up my YouTube following, and I'm always interested in critique and, feedback, constructive feedback. I should preface with that, and to make it better.
Very cool. Okay, so let's back up a little bit. I think I got ahead of myself.
Yeah.
Tell everybody about yourself. A little bit
Mhm.
about background, your superhero origin story, how you got to where you're at.
Yeah.
And, yeah. Let's go ahead and talk about that first.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I'm originally from the Bay Area. I'm a Bay Area native. I'm from Berkeley, California. I
Nice.
currently reside in Charlotte, North Carolina. I moved here. It'll be 12 years in August to attend graduate school, University of North Carolina at Charlotte. Graduated in 2011 with a master's in computer science, a graduate certificate in information security and privacy. And pretty much I tell people, most people ask, when did you fall in love with computers? And I usually start and say when I was 14, when I received my first internship. But I was talking with my brother maybe about 6 months to a year ago. And he was like, do you remember when you won your computer in 5th grade? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you don't remember winning a computer in 5th grade? He was like, it was some contest or something, I forgot now, but he was like, yeah, you won a computer. And I was like, I totally forgot that. And it was just like, wow. So in my mind, it started off at 14, but it was when I was in the 5th grade.
Very
And
cool.
yeah, so it was at that time I wasn't really interested in school, and I was like not going to class, and it was just a mess. So had a really bad GPA. And I remember the GPA I had at the time was a 1.7, and you needed a 2.0 to get the internship. Well, in the late 90s, my high school, Berkeley High, had a series of fires. Like every week there were fires, to the point they made MTV. Like MTV covered our school because of the fires in 1999. You can look it up. And so I used that to my advantage. And so here's the start of the hacker story, because I used it to my advantage. And I was like, yeah, because they were like, hey, we need your transcript. And I was like, the admissions office was the last building that caught fire, so I can't bring you my transcript. And so they were like, oh, okay, well, that's fine. Just come, get back to us whenever you can. I never did. So, and, they were like, oh, God, we like you so much. So it really didn't matter at that point. So at the end of the summer, the job that I was working at, which was a nonprofit, it was called Access to Software for All People, ASAP. And they're no longer in business, and no longer, you can't find them. But essentially, my manager at the time was like, hey, we really like you. We want to keep you part-time while you go to school. So I worked there, honestly, till the day after I graduated. They shut down the day after I graduated, which I found was kind of interesting. So after that, it was like, hey, I really like computers. I was looking at it and I was like, I have to figure this thing out, right? So it was like at the end of my 9th grade year, as I said, I had the 1.7 GPA. The fall semester of 10th grade, I got a 4.0. And then my grades just went up from there. And it was just like, I found my purpose, because before, and it's like, what do you want to do? And you give the standard answer, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, right? But it was like, I don't want to be a doctor, because I was like, I don't really like the sight of blood. And I was like, and a lawyer, I was like, I mean, it's like, I could argue my point, but I don't want to do that all day. And so with the internship and with computers, I was like, hey, I like this. And it's a challenge, it's a puzzle. And I'm also a gamer. I love video games. So I was like, I have to figure this out. Right. So when I graduated from high school, it was like, I want to continue down this path. And so I graduated close to 20 years ago. So at that time in the early 2000s, it's like, hey, I want to do, continue down the computer path. And it's pretty much like, oh, okay, well, if you go to college, you major in computer science. That's the only way. Like, that's the only path. It's like, you want to do computers, you major in computer science. So that's what I did. Okay. And, got the bachelor's, and the minor in math. And everyone is like, oh my God, you have a minor in math. And it's like, honestly, it was like an additional course because it's like, I'm already taking the math classes for computer science. It was maybe like 1 or 2 extra classes. And I was like, okay. And a fun fact was I majored in computer science and I double minored in math and criminal justice, but I didn't get the criminal justice minor because it was like the class that I needed was going to come like the spring after I graduated, like the following year. And I was like, I'm not going to wait. So, but essentially my dream at the time was to work in like work for the FBI and like their computer division and do all the things. Right. But it didn't happen. So then in 2009, I left California, moved, for the graduate degree. And then once I graduated, I started working for an investment firm in Charlotte doing programming. And I realized very early on, I could not do this for the rest of my life. I didn't like it. I hated it. And it was just like, even in college, I was just like, because everyone, most people were like, oh my God, programming. And I'm like, yeah, I can really take or leave this. And it was just, people would look at me like I had 3 heads because I was like, I don't really want to do this, right? So while I was a programmer, I also did moonlighting as a QA. And when I did that, I found all the bugs. And it was just like, to the point that my coworkers didn't want me to test their code because they were like, you're going to find something. Right. We can't get over. So then I was like, I always loved security because I'm going to date myself. In the late 90s, early 2000s, I stumbled upon a Yahoo group on cryptography. And I was like, oh, wow, this is cool, where, you can have a message and you could do like this algorithm and turn it into gibberish and then turn it back. And then at one point, the minor in math came in because I was like, on the ledge of like, do I want to be a crypto analyst? Do I want to go into this? And I was like, yeah, no, I don't think I want to do this, forever. So, so then, going back to, when I did the QA stuff, I was like, hey, I still like this security stuff and I'm really good at finding bugs, penetration testing, right? So then it was like in 2017, I left the company and I moved into penetration testing. But before I left the company, so in 2014, like I spoke with my then manager and, I just didn't like programming. And we were in a one-on-one and he was like, I can tell you're not happy. He was like, because I'm talking to you. He was like, you're just not happy. He was like, but when we talk about security, he was like, I could see like there's light in your eyes. He was like, this is what you really want to do. And he was like, look, I'm going to help you get there. So, and he really did. And so what he, he was like, give me some time. And maybe like a month later, he was like, hey, we have this special project I want you to, to get on. And I was like, I don't know. He was like, no, you're going to do it. And he's like, essentially, he was like, you're going to be a volunteer. So how it worked at the time at the company was they outsourced their penetration tests. So Aspect Security, I think they're under Eli Lilly now. And then NCC will come do the penetration test, write the reports, hand it to them. These are all the things you need to fix, right? So then they would send it, give it to the project manager. The project manager would then assemble the volunteers, which I was in the beginning, And then we will fix, repair the vulnerabilities. And the stack they were using was Java. They were a Java shop. I believe they're still a Java shop, but I'll just use the time that I'm there. They were a Java shop. So, created the security vulnerabilities. So I did that for a year. And then, senior management was like, wow, she's really killing it. Other people was like, she's really interested, enthusiastic. And so the project manager at the time moved because he received a promotion. So he transitioned out. And so everyone was like, hey, Jasmine, you're really enthusiastic. You're doing really well. Everyone really likes you. You take over as the PM. So now I'm responsible for these vulnerabilities from inception to completion. So it's like
Nice.
after the penetration testers do all the things, I'm looking at the vulnerabilities, assembling the volunteers, and at this time, providing security consulting to the volunteers, if they're stuck, giving them remediation strategies. And then at that time, it wasn't a DevOps model. So working with the testing manager, making sure your packages was, and working with the release manager, making sure everything was aligned, and then you push to production. And how it worked at that time was the vulnerabilities couldn't be closed until senior management reviewed. So the senior product owner reviewed it every quarter. So and I did that for a year. And then in 2016, I officially moved to the security group at that company. And I was a security automation engineer. And at that point, they were moving to a DevOps model. So helping the developers, while they were accelerating with writing their code, making sure it was secure, helping them write automated unit tests and cross-site request forgery and authorization. But I always say our cross-site request forgery was rudimentary. It was super rudimentary. We were looking at the header to make sure it was part of the domain, but as everyone knows, you can spoof that, right? So I was like, that's a severe caveat. It was like the solution was not elegant at all. It was just this, right, as a starting point.
Yep.
And so then, as I said, in 2017, I left, became a penetration tester 100% of the time. And while I liked penetration testing, I was like, I don't want to do this 100% of the time. I like variety. So then I moved to my current company, and where it's like I have a variety, but also, which is kind of funny, Friday is my last day and I'm moving to another company,
Cool.
after Friday, not this Monday, but the following Monday. And it's just like, again, just elevating. Now I'll be doing architecture. So I'll be shifting left into this role because, as I tell people in the SDLC, the software development lifecycle, I've always been a like implementation onward, and it's like I want to shift left and move to like design and architecture and look at threat modeling and all of that, because I'm really not exposed to those things. And I was like, and that would make me a better security practitioner. So so that's pretty much a little about me.
That's great. Okay. Jasmine, I love the fact that you had somebody who would be willing to help champion you and help you get to where you wanted to be. It sounds like you had a great manager or two there that was helpful. And you said you're moving into security architecture. So what made you want to start doing mobile testing? I mean, your bio here says you realized the barrier at entry was very low.
Yes.
Android's open source, but the threat exposure is high.
Yeah. So when I was at the company that I moved to in 2017, I actually completed the SANS 575 mobile device and analyst security course. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. But then I was like, with iOS, I was like, I'm not an Apple, I'm not part of their ecosystem. And I was like, looking at this class, I was like, getting into one of their apps, I was like, it's going to take a lot of effort. And then I looked at Android and I was like, I was like, this is open source. and I was like, it uses Linux, and I was like, the barrier of entry is super low because with Android is, I mean, so here's the thing with Apple is pretty much like, we do everything for you. Here you go. Right. It's like, you can't change anything. You can't, it's like, we pre-configured it for you. You just use it. Right. And with Android, it's pretty much like it's fragmented. So it's like you might have one phone, a Pixel, that is not the same as a Galaxy, right? Depending on, configurations and everything like that. So I was like, I was like, the ecosystem here is not the best. I was like, I could probably exploit these phones better, in less time. Also, I'm interested in bug bounties. And I noticed looking at the payouts, I was like, I was like, the web payouts were good. I was like, but these mobile payouts are more. And so I used that as a challenge to learn, because it was like the class, but it was like I really didn't have any hands-on. So I used the emulator, and I was like, hey, I'm going to learn this. And that's what I did.
Okay. So you work at companies that allow for you to be able to do bug bounties? I know a lot of pen testing firms don't allow people to do bug bounties.
So I'm not, so I don't work at a pen testing firm anymore. And that was kind of one of the reasons. And I'm still fairly new in like my bug bounty journey. I would say I'm very much a novice, but yeah. But I'm not, that was actually one of the reasons why I'm not at a pen testing firm, because kind of like the gray line of like what you can do and what you can't do.
Sure. That makes sense. Mr. Betcher, did you have any particular question you'd like to start out by asking?
Nothing yet.
Okay.
I was just wondering, like, what are some of the favorite things that you've learned, like jumping into the mobile pen testing stuff?
Yeah, so I'm like one of my the strength builders. Like top 3 for me is learner, right? So I love learning. So it's just the journey for me. Like I knew it was like, okay, I have this phone, this Android phone. So the thing, one of the things that I loved was to actually like, learn the different components of an Android app. What are some of the mandatory things that you need? Decompiling an Android app, reverse engineering an Android app, seeing it in person, actually doing it. I'm also a kinesthetic learner. So it's like, so I learn by doing. So it's like actually seeing, and it's like, oh, wow, this works. And, just the journey, I would say that.
Very cool. Yeah, because I mean, I know nothing about it. Like, I've wiped and put custom stuff on some Android phones, but that was very painful for me.
Yeah.
That's why I prefer to just like say heck with it. Now I just have Apple devices.
Right.
That's my easy button.
I always enjoyed rooting my phones, because then, if you worked for a corporate entity that forced you to put their mobile devices or their email or something on your phone, telling them it was rooted was, oh, you can't put it on your phone. So I was like, oh, that's a problem.
Oh,
yeah.
Darn. You'll have to give me a phone then, or I'm not going to be able to, have 24/7 access to my Slacks and my emails and stuff. Yeah.
And even with that, because again, going back to the company I moved to in 2017, they actually gave me a phone, but most times I just had the phone. I had it off. So it was just like, oh, okay. Even if you wanted to reach me, you couldn't. And it was what's really funny was it was an iOS phone. It was an Apple phone. I thought that was funny.
Yeah. I got around it at CrowdStrike by using an iPod Touch, because the only thing I needed it for was Octopush or 2-factor, and I didn't need the phone portion. I just needed data. So
yeah,
I just installed Okta on some old POS iPod Touch and used it until it didn't update anymore. So cool. All right. So what are you doing there, Mr. Betcher? You're highlighted the whole page. What's up?
The cat.
Oh, it's the cat. He's cat typing. Okay.
So I have 2. I had a boy and a girl. They're twins. Yeah, and I remember I was at work and one of my coworkers were like, Jasmine, are you having a stroke? And I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, yeah, look up. They're like, we assumed it was your cats, but yeah, I was like, oh yeah, that was them. I was like, I'm so sorry. It was just like gibberish. I was like, yeah, that wasn't me.
It's easier to blame the cats when you fall asleep or something, you know, work,
Yeah.
and you're like, you know, oh, space. And you're like, no, that was my
Right.
cats. I didn't fall asleep. I didn't fall asleep. I didn't
Totally.
fall asleep. It's totally the cats. So, you know, we're talking about, you know, Android applications. You know, you said everything is open source and somewhat free. What is it? If I wanted to get into reverse engineering apps, what are some of the some of the prerequisites that I need? I mean, do I need a computer? Do I need a handset?
So
you know, what kind of software we're looking at?
Yeah, so I would say yes, you would have a computer. I actually created a virtual machine that is, so I'll shout out another virtual machine, Android Tamer. So I started the mobile journey in like 2019. So
Okay.
I was like, okay, I'm gonna do a mobile workshop at Diana Initiative. That is a conference during DEF CON.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I need a mobile virtual machine because I was like, I don't want to download all of these tools because as it stands now, when you do Android hacking, you have to download all the tools that you want, right? And you can download the tools and then sometimes they're not compatible with each other. And I was like, oh, I found this Android Tamer virtual machine. And I was like, but wait, it doesn't work. And so I contacted the creator on Twitter and he was like, yeah, he was like, this is like 4 years old. And he was like, I would not use that if I were you. And I was like, I have a mobile workshop in like 6 weeks. And he was like, no, I can tell you how to create your own. And I was like, oh, really? And he was so sweet. And he like really like I was like, oh my God, I was like, these questions are so stupid. And he was like, no, you're fine. And I was like, okay. And he really guided me. And so the first version of my virtual machine, intro to Android security virtual machine, I set it to 15 gigabytes. And I realized really quickly, I severely underestimated the size that I needed because it was like, yeah, when I tried to update, it was like, yeah, you're out of memory, right? And so I was like, crap. And so I was like, well, let me see if I can, upgrade it. But then it was like, no, I'll have to start from scratch. So it was, I think version 1 stayed for a little while. And then after the conference that I did earlier this month, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do the second version. And so I did that and I used Vagrant and so the intro to Android security is built on Linux 18.04. And so I used Vagrant because that box had 128 gigabytes. So I was like, this is more than enough space. I kind of went on a tangent to say, yes, you need a computer, and I'm plugging my virtual machine because it has the common tools for Android hacking. So it's like, you don't need to download anything except for this virtual machine, and you should be good to go. Also, as I said, I use emulators, but it's like, I know people who do it as well. And they're like, yeah, you need an actual phone. So it's like, that's something that I will, use in the future, but it's just like you could just have a computer. But I would say if you do use an emulator, emulators take a lot of memory. And it's like what I found, because the emulator that I have on my site, SourceForge, TheFluffy007, what I found with the emulator Android x86, like I have to set it to like 4 gigs for it to like work somewhat good. And it's like, if I don't do 4 gigs, then it's kind of like wonky. All of the tools for Android hacking are free. So for the most part, it's like, again, it's kind of like open source. So it's like, you don't pay for that. I know. And again, with iOS, like even when I took my class, it was like, companies that have devices to crack iOS devices, but these tools or computers or whatever, 30,000. Like I know in one instance, it was like, you know, you send your phone to the company and it's like, hey, you send the phone to us, we'll crack it and we'll give it back to you. And of course, you know, privacy. It's like, what are you doing with my phone? Like, okay, you crack it. How do I know you're not copying my data? Right? Because you're not there. They're like, no, you can't come. Give us the phone. Yep. Right. So it's like with Android, you really don't have that. So it's just like, again, all of the are free and, you know, and you can just do all the things. But I guess I want to make sure I answered your question fully.
I think that's good. I've used a number of emulators. I think there was one called BlueStacks, another one called
Genymotion.
Genymotion. Yeah.
Genymotion.
Yeah. And then there was one called, I think Google even has one called Android Studio or something like that.
Yeah, I think, yes.
That one's painful. That one makes me cry sad tears.
Yeah, that was the one I tried at first. And I actually had a virtual machine and I was like, hey, this isn't working. And the gentleman that helped me, he was like, yeah, you don't want to do that. He was like, that is going to be painfully slow.
Well, I am glad that it wasn't just me. That's exactly where I started. And I completely gave up. I'm like, this is
I don't like Android Studio at all.
I'm done. I must not be able to understand this. I'll just go do something else.
I wasn't even using it for hacking. I just wanted to be able to play some of my Android games on my computer because I don't like looking at a small ass screen all day because they're, you know, BlueStacks or Genymotion and those were like, oh, they're great, except, oh, it's, you know, it's got this limitation or you have to pay for it or whatever. And I was like, well, I'll just use Android Studio. And then it was like, after 12 hours, I'm like, just let me go back to my phone. I just want to play my Sudoku. I just want to play my Sudoku on my phone and screw it. You know,
I was trying to make a Tinder bot.
A Tinder bot. Why does that not surprise me? Why does that not surprise me? You wanted to auto swipe left for you using like Selenium?
No, I just wanted to see what I could do with it. I kind of wanted because I kept on seeing people's profiles with like their phone numbers and stuff in it. Yeah. And I thought like, I wonder if I could scrape profiles for like PII.
Right. Okay. Well, that would be good for a talk, I think, on privacy.
I know. And then I tried for a couple weeks and gave up.
I am always shocked when I see what people put online or questions like, on Twitter, it's like, where, you know, it was like, who was your first best friend? And I'm like, do you know these are like security questions you guys are answering? And yeah, where were you born? What is your mother's maiden name? I'm like, why are you answering these questions? It's like, you are being social engineered. Don't answer.
I'm not surprised after the whole Twitter, you know, hey, post your brand new credit card information pictures.
Oh my God,
I
can't believe people actually
I'm never surprised anymore. Yeah. And after 2020 Twitter, I just, no, there's nothing that surprises me anymore. All right. So I've put links in the show notes to a Bug Crowd blog, I think that is yours, I think. And also your SourceForge account where people can download the Android hacking tools. So cool. So there's plenty of stuff there. So let's talk about some of those tools. You got one called Quark, QARK. Is that a
so some of the tools I included that in the README. So I was I also, you know, have participated in many sites such as Try Hack Me, Hack the Box. And with Try Hack Me, it was an Android room that someone created, StuNet, on Try Hack Me. And I saw tools that I'd never seen before, like Quark, Mara framework. And I was like, hey, I want to add these. So those tools are like more so automation tools, like you pass in the APK, which is the Android package or the Android application. And then it's like as like a scanning of looking for, you know, all of the security vulnerabilities from like the OWASP top 10 for mobile, right? So it's like, if you're in a pinch, you can use those to kind of get a depth of like where you are. And then you can use that to kind of guide your research.
Okay. When you took the 575 course, or was it 575?
Yeah, it was 575.
Yeah. Okay. Who were your instructors? Was it Heather and them, or was it somebody else?
Oh God, I can't think who my instructor
Heather
was
Mihalik
now.
is I think helped write some of that. I could be wrong, but she's,
I think it was a gentleman who did it, if
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not mistaken.
All right.
Yeah.
No, that's
I
cool.
want to
I
say
just wondered.
Joshua. I want to possibly say Joshua Wright, but I'm not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it was him, but I'm not 100%.
Right. Okay. So when you're analyzing Android applications, what are some of the things that you these are pre-compiled, they're in a marketplace, you download them, they're running on your mobile device, or in this case an emulator. What are some of the first things that you look at when you're analyzing an Android APK in this case, which is the Android version, and IPKs are iOS, but we're not going to talk about IPKs.
Yeah. So one of the first things I do is actually run the application, right, to see if what comes back to me. So it's like,
that makes sense.
Yeah. So for instance, if I run the application and I receive an error and I can't go any further, then that kind of gives me a starting point when I reverse engineer the app using JetX, and they have a command line and a GUI version. So I've used the GUI because I like clicking and everything like that. So that's probably one of the first things I do. And just to be clear, like when you reverse engineer an app, and I explain this a lot of times, they also explain this in classes, companies or developers, will obfuscate their code, right? So they want to make it as, unintelligible or illegible to the average user, because it's like, if I package my code and I don't obfuscate, you have the keys to the kingdom. Like, you can modify my application and then upload it to the Google Play Store, which is the official repository for Android devices. And I also, when I do my mobile workshops, I provide case studies of like, hey, there were case studies done where, popular apps, people were downloading counterfeit versions from the official repository, from the official Google store. Right. So I tell people all the time, hey, when you're downloading apps, you need to be very careful, and you need to make sure it is verified. You need to make sure the app you're using is the app that you say you want to use, because some of these counterfeits are really good. And it's like, and if you're just in a hurry, you could download it very quickly. So I just want to mention the obfuscation, because people think, oh, okay, I reverse engineer the app. And it's like, why am I seeing this gibberish? It's like, that's done on purpose. So you can't find the functionality. But so when I say I execute the app, run the app, and if I see like an error, I try to find that in the code. Like, okay, I know there's an error. Like, let me find this. Let me look at the logic, and let me try to, figure out what's going on. Also, with Android apps, you have Android Manifest, which is like the skeleton of Android app. Every Android app has a skeleton. And this Android Manifest talks about activities, which are described as screens. So a screen in the Android device is an activity. And so every Android app has a main activity, and you could think of that as the entry point into the application. Every Android app has a main activity. If it doesn't, it will not work. Just like every app has Android Manifest. If it's not there, it will not work. Also, looking at in the manifest, you can also see permissions. In Android apps, they have normal permissions. These are permissions that don't change the state of your phone, and they're relatively safe. Then you have dangerous permissions, as you can guess. They do change the state of your phone, and they could be malicious, right? So you have that. You also have, you would be very surprised how a lot of people hard code like passwords and IDs and to
Not surprised. Not surprised at all. No, not
and
surprised.
and it's just like, wow, it's like the information leakage is very, it's just like, wow, this is very, very interesting. Like,
Yeah.
and again, it goes back to people do not think, oh, you can't reverse engineer. And it's like, there are tools out here, APK tool, which is a decompiling system, decompiling app, a program that you can do to decompile. That's free. You can just go to Google and download it. And you can decompile an app, and then you can also rebuild an app. So you can change code and then rebuild it. So it's like, again, these tools are very accessible. And it's just like a lot of times, I shouldn't say a lot of times, but most people or some people, when as developers, you only look at the happy path, right? It's like, oh no, I have this app and you're going to use it, and for its intended purposes. And there are some developers who don't think of like as a nefarious person of like, okay, if I really wanted to do damage with this app, what can I do? Right. And it's like, I mean, I get it. As I said, I was a developer in a former life. And, I get it, when you do development professionally and, you have, agile, if you're doing agile and you have sprints and retrospectives and time to market and velocities. And it's like, we have to go on this day, no ands, ifs, or buts. And, most times security is an afterthought until right before you push to production. And it's like, oh, we have to do our obligatory penetration test. And it's like, yeah, you have like 20 vulnerabilities. So, and then you start doing the barter game, right? Where it's like, okay, well, which ones will stop us? And it's like, okay, these 3 will stop us. Okay, we're going to fix those 3 barely. And then the others we're going to put on the backlog and never touch them, right? That's how it normally works. So, and again, it's, I'm getting like on my soapbox here, but it's just like, it needs to be a shift as far as, putting security in the forefront. So, yeah.
Yep. So, I want to ask Mr. Betcher this question because he deals a lot with malware, which is going to be something that's going to kind of dovetail into Jasmine's bit here.
Mm-hmm.
There are a number of websites and news stories about malicious Android apps and ones that either sideloaded because companies allow mobile devices to sideload apps, or people get around them. I wondered from Mr. Betcher, and I don't know how much he can tell me, but he works incident response at his organization, and I was wondering if he had any recent or had heard about any incident responses that dealt with mobile malware at all, and how, if so, how it was handled.
Surprisingly, no. The mobile stuff would be separate than, for most companies. People would come into the office and they'd be on a separate Wi-Fi, right? That's totally outside of the company.
Right.
So if they do get any malware, it's on their own personal device.
Right. But y'all have company devices, right? So, if somebody was, some VP or somebody sideloads, Fluffy Birds or something like that, and, it's some kind of, nasty malware, that's now inside that trust zone, no matter how new the Android device is, any kind of device, I'll allow permissions on this flashlight app to access my, contacts and set alarms and all this stuff. What would a detection mechanism look like for an org that has, is MDM helpful in that case? Or do you have to set policy to say, no outside apps or only from trusted sources? But what does it look like for an organization like yours?
In an organization like mine, we just don't deal with mobile stuff.
Okay.
People have their laptops and they do all their information on, all their company stuff on their company laptops, and their mobile devices, their personal. So all the meetings and everything is on laptops.
Okay.
They don't even fool with Android or Apple.
So if they sideloaded an app that was reading their email, their company email, or, you know, looking at the Slack channels that they're joined in, you don't have any visibility into anything like that.
The only thing is they do have, and again, I don't know anything about it, but they do have, if you want email on your phone, they basically man in the middle of your phone.
Oh my.
Yeah. So the company does. So you put a certificate on your phone, and then you can get email on your phone. It's a whole suite.
Like
of
SSL
apps that-
inspection.
Yeah,
So-
like yeah. I was thinking about, you know, APKs. You know, we're talking about that with Jasmine, and so Jasmine, when you're now analyzing these things, do you ever look at things like network connections? If you're, do you ever look at malware APKs, or, you know, you've got a company that says, hey, you know, we found fluffy birds on this guy's phone, and we're not sure if it's actually legit. How do you go about analyzing something that may be malicious? You know, on your environment? Do you have protections to keep your emulator from potentially jumping hosts? I mean, I don't know if it has that ability with an APK, but
I don't.
What?
Yeah, I don't think my emulator has that, but it's like with the malware apps, it's pretty much like, again, going back to reverse engineering. It's once you start looking at the functionality of the app, you can kind of tell pretty quickly. Like, for instance, if I see like, hey, you know, we're doing SMS, you know, texting, you know, SMS, which is like texting, you know, we're sending these alerts, but we're charging you $1 to send them. It's kind of like, something's not right here, right?
Right.
So it's, you know, again, it just goes back to the functionality. But going back to what was discussed earlier, like, I know at one of my companies, like I said, they gave us an Apple phone, and it was pretty much like you couldn't download anything. They had a trusted sandbox, and it was like, and if the app is not part of this sandbox or these approved apps, you couldn't download. It would just automatically fail. And I know that's a lot of times that's what companies do. It's just kind of an accepted list. It's just like, okay, you know, you're going to have these things. And if you try to do anything outside of that, it's just not going to work.
Right. So you've mentioned you were going to be working with bug bounties, and that, you know, mobile payouts are higher. Why is that? Is that, I mean, by your admission that the barrier to entry is very low and the threat is very high, why are mobile payouts higher, you think?
Well, and I discussed this a little bit in the you know, in the pre-check. Okay. People really don't realize that these mobile devices are mini computers. And it's just like, you know, you can do a lot of things. You know, you have apps like Instagram and Facebook, and it's like these apps are collecting a lot of data, right? Just imagine if you have a banking app on your phone, right? And it's like, and I reverse engineer that. And it's like, and I find your credentials. Let's just hope that's not the case. Right. And it's just like, you know, now I can effectively log into your banking information and I can steal money, right? And it's just like, I think for some people, they really don't look at mobile phones like that. It's just like, oh yeah, I make calls, I get on the internet, you know, I'd send text and video, but no one is really looking at the security implications of like, this is a mini computer. And you have like antivirus on your computer, and you don't download just anything on your computer, and you have like all of these, you know, the checklists and the good, you know, security practices.
I don't know, it depends on who you are.
Yeah, I know, but that goes out of the window with mobile devices. It's, you know, people, again, I mentioned earlier with like the Google Play Store, you know, they found like counterfeit apps, but a lot of people was like, oh, it's the Google Play Store, it's the official repository. Oh, okay, it's safe. And it's like any and everything you download on your mobile device, you need to scrutinize, right? Because it doesn't mean it's safe. Like, for instance, I know with apps, and it's like, can we use your contacts? No, you don't need my contact information. Can we, you know, your pictures? No, you don't need my pictures. Like, And it's just like, again, I think some people download these apps and they're like, yeah, yes to everything. And it's just like, does this app really need your contacts? Like,
yeah. I think nobody really cares about that until somebody tells Google, hey, why is this flashlight app asking for all of these permissions? I went ahead and accepted them because, I needed a flashlight.
That was our show for this week. You can find show notes for this and all of our shows at www.breakingsecurity.com. You can also find an RSS link on the site to add to your favorite podcatcher. You can find all of us on Twitter. Miss Berlin can be found at InfoSyster, INFOSYSTIR. Mr. Betcher can be found at BetcherPwned, BOETTCHERPWNED. And you can follow me on Twitter at Brian Brake, BRYANBRAKE. We have a Slack. Come join us on our Slack. A lot of great things going on there. A lot of channels of various InfoSec-related subjects. You can get an invite on Twitter by emailing our official Twitter handle for the show at Brakesec, BRAKESEC, or you can email us at bds.podcast@gmail.com. Thank you to all of our Patreon supporters for their monetary assistance by offsetting costs involved in putting out a weekly show. Zoom fees, Libsyn hosting, domain purchase, renewal, equipment upgrades, time and effort building the community we have. We appreciate all of your help and support. If you'd like a t-shirt, stickers, coffee mug, or just to show your support for the show, you can check out our TPub site, www.tpublic.com/user/BDS podcast. We thrive on your feedback. A quick 5-star comment on iTunes or Google Play Store or your favorite streaming service, Spotify, Pandora, what have you, go a long way to gaining us additional visibility. It takes no time at all, and we appreciate your help in spreading the word. That was it for Breaking Down Security this week. Be safe, be well, be kind to one another, take care of yourself because you're the only you have, and we'll talk to you again soon.